I'd like to start by thanking the government for introducing this mechanism. For me, and I imagine for all of us, being a member of Dáil is an extraordinary honour. This is my first time introducing legislation to the Dáil, and it really is the most amazing privilege as a citizen of Ireland and a member of the Dáil to be able to do it. I'm sure deputies here who are not ministers may have already had a chance to use this facility, and I know there's a long waiting list, and I hope many do. Certainly for me on a personal level, as a new member of the Dáil, it really is a great privilege to be here this morning and to be introducing this legislation. I'd also like to thank my fellow TDs, the ministers, Ken Corr and the staff for attending. I'm quickly learning the multitude of pulls on a TD's time, and I know that everybody here could be doing very important work, either here in their office or in their constituencies this morning. So I'd really like to express my sincere thanks to everybody for coming here today, and I really look forward to debating this bill, to teasing out some of its imperfections, looking at what is useful in the bill, what the essence of it might be, and how that might be brought forward. Now, I'm aware that the bill is going to be voted down on Tuesday. Minister Shatter was good enough to give me some of his time during the week, and he outlined some of his concerns with the bill, and I'm sure they will be outlined in some detail today. I present the bill to the House today not as a technically perfect bill. I don't present it as something that I think should be signed into law tomorrow. I present it as what I hope is a very solid starting point to a legislative process, and that through that legislative process, the Dáil, the relevant committee or committees, the Seanad, would get to input to the bill, refine it, get it right, and then ideally pass it into law. Now, I'm aware in this case that the bill comes within the context of the personal insolvency bill, which Minister Shatter is bringing before the House. I read the 164 pages of the heads of the bill, which as a non-lawyer took several cups of coffee, took some time, and I was hugely impressed. I think it's a genuinely radical piece of legislation. I think it's going to provide extraordinary comfort to many, many Irish citizens, and I think it really is a radical stance and change on behalf of the Irish citizens, and it is going to be of enormous social benefit. What I would love, it may not be possible, but what I would love is for the essence of this bill today. This bill is a very short bill. I would love for the essence of that bill to make its way possibly into the personal insolvency bill if the Minister, if the Cabinet, if the House thinks that there is something there which would work well as part of the Minister's bill. I think it would. I'm not an expert in law. I'm not an expert in this area. But I do think there is a place, potentially as part of the personal insolvency bill, for this amendment or clause to be added. So I'm aware that the vote is not going to go my way on Tuesday, and that there's nothing here I could say today, I imagine, which would change the outcome of that vote. You never know. Thank you. So I'm not going to try.
No journalists in the House today. There's no journalists in the House today.
I'm not going to try and change the outcome. What I would like to do is use this opportunity to explain the objectives of the bill, to explain the problems that the bill is going to address, and to explain how I think it would fit very well with and complement the upcoming personal insolvency bill. The context for the crisis, I've asked for some briefing notes to be passed to the deputies in the House. I don't know if they've arrived yet. In putting this bill together, I did some analysis around the current state of mortgage arrears in the country at the moment, and there's a graph in the notes that have been handed out which show 3 possible scenarios for what could happen. Right now, according to the central bank's figures, as of September last year, 1 in 12 mortgages was in arrears of more than 90 days in Ireland. If you add the mortgages which have been restructured, some of which may be viable, but which are still causing enormous hardship for the borrowers, that goes up to about 1 in 10. And if you add the lower than 90-day arrears, it goes up further. What's worrying is that the rate of increase in the mortgage arrears is not happening linearly, it's happening exponentially. And what I mean by that is the pace is not sort of 5,000 new arrears cases per month or per quarter. It's increasing by a percentage. It's increasing by 10%, 11%, 12% per quarter. And very worryingly, the rate at which it is increasing, that percentage, for the last 4 quarters we have data for, is rising. I believe it was roughly 10%, then 11%, then 12%, then 13%, which is a very, very worrying trend. Now, the graph that I've handed out, the top line of it, shows what would happen if the rate we've seen over the last 4 quarters continued for the next 2 years. And that shows a cataclysmic outcome whereby nearly 1 in 2 mortgages in the country would be in arrears of 90 days or more. The middle line shows what I think is most probably going to happen. And that maintains the percentage growth for the next 8 quarters at the average percentage growth we've seen for the last 2 years, in around 12% per quarter. Now, if that happens, we're going to be faced, thank you, Ken Corla. If that happens, we're going to be faced with 1 in 4 mortgages in arrears of 90 days or more in just 2 years. So the potential scale of this mortgage arrears problem is absolutely enormous. It's no longer a marginal thing. Now, we thought we'd capitalise the banks to deal with this. We made $7.5 billion available to them through the BlackRock stress testing, but they're not passing it on. We had Bank of Ireland before the Finance Committee last year, and they admitted after being asked, I think about 5 or 6 times, including an intervention from Alex White, that they hadn't passed on a single penny. And AIB said they didn't know, but they got back to us in the Finance Committee and they said they'd only passed on 600,000. In terms of full legal surrender and any call on this debt, they have made provisions on their own balance sheets, but that doesn't help the borrowers. So the banks aren't passing any of this money on. And I would suggest to the House that the reason they're not passing it on is because they don't have to. It's because right now the law is weighted entirely in their favour. As I've said, Minister Shatter's proposed bill goes an enormous way to correcting that imbalance. And I would suggest to the House that my much more humble bill helps in one particular case and complements the bill. We just take a quick case study. I had a couple came into the constituency office from Wicklow. She's a public sector worker. Her income has fallen over the last few years. He's a local businessman. The family home and the business premises are in arrears and in negative equity. The reason they're in arrears is because the bank has raised the variable rate mortgage, the interest rate, about 4 or 5 times in the last year and a bit, and has doubled their mortgage payments. It forced them into arrears. Now, every deputy here is dealing on a daily basis with the social consequences of what's going on here. In this case, something I can't get out of my mind was the lady in question said they're now watching the amount of toothpaste they put on their toothbrush because they're being left with so little money that they haven't money for toothpaste. Now, that's the situation they're in. If the bank decided to take possession of their home, they could be stopped for a year because of the moratorium, but ultimately, the judge would have to enforce possession. He or she would not be allowed to apply discretion and say, look, these borrowers have made a reasonable offer. You have essentially forced them into arrears through your actions. It is not reasonable that you take their house. That really is at the nub of what this bill is trying to do.
Thank you, Deputy.
Oh, am I done?
No, you're just there.
I'm just there, okay. Thank you. Right, I just want to say I look forward to the debate. As I said, I don't present this as something that should be passed into law tomorrow. I would love to find a way for the essence of what I'm trying to do and what this bill is trying to do to be included. I think it is important. It was drafted in close collaboration with New Beginning. Ross Maguire, Senior Counsel, who's in the courts dealing with these all the time and is at the negotiating table all the time, also welcomes Minister Shatter's bill and believes that this extra piece would really help, because he said what the banks are able to do is say, look, ultimately, we don't have to cooperate. We don't have to take any offer from you. And ultimately, we can take your family home. We can make you homeless. So you're going to do whatever we want. There is now a credible threat of bankruptcy for 3 years. The guys who are dealing with this stuff in the courts every day believe that the essence of what we're trying to do here would help and would complement it. We had an open letter in the Irish Times today, signed by Professor Jerry White, who is one of the foremost experts on the Constitution, signed by Dr. Pora Kenna, who is a housing law expert, by Konstantin Gurdjieff, who took a look at the economic implications, by Nolene Blackwell, the director of FLAC, by senior counsels like Bill Shipsey and Urquhart Stewart. That's just to say that I accept that there are technical problems with this bill, but that serious economic and legal people have taken a look and say, in essence, we support this and would like to see something like this come through. Thank you very much.
Deputy Collins.
Can't call it.